This is a 2009 Lexus RX350 with the 3.5 liter V6 2GR-FE engine. This car came in the shop for an oil change and I started it up and oh joy, look, the battery light is on. Couldn't have happened in a better place. The customer was truly lucky. Battery light is on means that this thing here called the alternator is not charging the battery. In other words, the charging system has some kind of failure. We're going to do some quick diagnostics to see what it is before we just go ahead and replace this alternator. With the engine off, this battery is reading 12.5 volts, which is just a hair low. A healthy battery should read between 12.6 to 12.7 volts. And this could mean that the alternator has just recently failed. Now with the engine running, look at this, only 11.7 volts. This is definitely no good. Now just to be sure, I'm going to add some electrical loads because this alternator has a clutch. Now I want to see if I can get the clutch to kick in. I've turned on the bright headlights and the AC to run the radiator fans, and the voltage has gone even lower. So this alternator is definitely no good. We're going to replace it. On the repair estimating site RepairPal, the cost of this repair, the alternator replacement for the 2009 Lexus RX350, is listed between $822 and $939, with the labor cost being 29%. This means the labor cost is between $239 and $272. At the end of this video, I will ask you if this labor estimate seems to be in line with the amount of work that was done. So keep watching. Step 1 is remove these engine cover plastics. Step 2, disconnect battery negative 10mm socket wrench. Step 3, lift up the front right wheel. Take off the wheel. Take off the inner engine cover that's bolted on here, and this will give access to the belt tensioner. I'll give you a little bit better view in a moment. Step 4, I'm going to take off the belt. I'm going to loosen the tensioner using a 14mm wrench with 15mm added on for leverage. And I just have to turn this in the counterclockwise direction. Note something very important with this belt. See that little hole in the bottom of the tensioner? You can slip a hex key like that. That's like a, I don't know, 5mm hex key. And when you turn the tensioner, you can slide the hex key through into that slot, and it will hold the tensioner in the release position. And there it is, with the tensioner in the release position, the belt is loose. You can slip it off the pulleys, and you can take it off the alternator pulley on the top. Step 5, I've put the car back on the ground with the wheel on. Now I'm going to loosen or remove the alternator's connections. There's the stud connector right there, and it's like either a 10 or a 12mm nut that holds it. And then there's the regulator connector, which is right underneath it there, and it's just a push tab kind of connector. You press the tab and you pull back to release the connector. There's also one more fastener that is on the front of the alternator right there, and this one you just wiggle the little tab that it has on it, and when you wiggle the tab you can pull this plastic connector off of the metal post. As you may be able to see here, I've removed all the connectors. Now there may be some more moving around of wires that I need to do. If so, I will let you know later. For step 6, I'm going to remove the alternator bolts. There's one bolt that is entirely obvious. It's right here on the top. For this top alternator bolt, a ratcheting wrench like this is super helpful because of the tight clearance between the head of the bolt and the coolant hose. So this top bolt slips off over the top of the coolant hose, but just barely. The second bolt is not so obvious. It's also on the belt side of the alternator. For the bolt on the bottom ear of the alternator, you can see it right there, sort of in the middle of the frame. It's a 14mm bolt. It's right in front of that tensioner pulley. I'm going to reach it from down under the car. There was not enough room to get my hand through from above. And what I'm going to do to make it a little bit easier is I'm going to remove the tensioner pulley. Now this tensioner pulley has a reverse thread. And that means that to loosen it, I turn it in the clockwise direction. I'm going to get it out of the way. With this pulley out of the way, I have much better access to the alternator bolt up there. And this is what it looks like with this 14mm socket on the head of that bolt. Now for the final bolt, I'm going to show it to you from underneath. And you see the dipstick tube, you see the block drain, and you see my pointer. I've just pointed it right at that nut up there. It's a 12mm nut that attaches a little bracket. Okay, so once more, let me try to show you where it is. It's right up here. And if you remove that nut, then you can leave the bracket attached to the alternator, and you can remove the alternator and the little bracket together. One more thing I removed for ease of access is this dipstick tube. This top flange is bolted onto the head, and this bottom end with the O-ring just slips in to the lower part of the tube. So you undo this 12mm bolt up here, and you just pull this out. Now, you may want to replace this little O-ring when you put it back. Yeah, this makes it a lot easier to remove these bottom bolts for the alternator. Isn't that right, Ricky? Removing this dipstick tube was step number 7. I've got this alternator now completely disengaged from everything. It's just flopping around down in here because I've removed the 2 bolts on the belt side, and I've removed that bolt or that nut on the bracket. But now the question is, how do I get it out of here? It is not entirely obvious. So in order to make this a little bit less impossible, I've gone underneath, I've disconnected the oil pressure sensor and the AC and the O2 sensor, and I've pulled these wires all the way to the top. Okay, so they're up above now. The only wire remaining is the wire for the crankshaft position sensor. That one we are not going to remove. We're going to leave it in place. Pulling these wires was step number 8. So here is what I am doing to get this alternator out with the minimum of fuss. I have taken out the fan shroud. This is the fan shroud. It has 3 bolts along the top and 2 bolts around the bottom. And if you're lucky, you can get the bottom bolts out without breaking them. You just need to use some penetrant oil and go back and forth a little bit because they tend to be rusted out. There is also a big electrical connector in the front, and there is like a fastening point down here for the power steering hoses. You need to free those out of this little bracket. They just pull out. Then you can remove this fan shroud. Removing this fan shroud was step number 9. So believe me, if you do what I just told you, it is as easy as cake to get this alternator through here, and it is worth a little bit of extra work that you did for removing the fan shroud. Now it's possible you can do it without removing the fan shroud. Pulling this alternator out of this gap was the final step, step number 10. And now for the mystery bracket on the bottom of the alternator. In the car, the alternator is oriented just like this, facing forward, and this is the bracket that is on the bottom of the alternator. And the end of this bracket goes over a stud that comes out of the block, and that is what I loosened up in order to get it out. And on the bottom here you have this little attachment point for the harness, and that is for the little bit of the harness that goes back to the crankshaft position sensor. Now some people might try to undo this bolt that's on the alternator, and that's nearly impossible to do with the alternator in the car. It is far easier to just remove this one and extract the entire alternator with this bracket attached. As they say, installation is the reverse of removal, and you've seen how this was removed, so you should be able to figure out how to put it back in. By the way, this alternator that I just removed is a Denso alternator, so it's probably not the original alternator for the car. That would be marked with a Toyota tag instead of a Denso tag. So this car has 140,000 miles or so about it, so in other words, with 140,000 miles it is already on its third alternator. I'll tell you something, these 2GR engines just eat alternators. This is the most frequent replacement we have to do on these cars. And here it is, no more battery light with the engine running. So going back to this repair estimate, the labor amount that we estimated was between $239 and $272. So what do you think after watching this video? Was it worth that much? Was it worth more? Was it worth less? Have you done this repair or had it done by somebody else? How much did you have to pay for the labor? Not including the part, which could vary quite a lot depending on what parts you use. But just for the labor, around $250, let's say. Does that sound right? Let me know.